Superman was dead, not in comics where he was born and where, thanks to the work of great artists and writers like John Byrne and Jerry Ordway and Marv Wolfman and Roger Stern and Dan Jurgens and others that I don't have time to mention, he was actually undergoing a commercial and critical revival, and not on television, where the character had first been exposed to a wider popular audience through the Adventures of Superman show in the 50s, where, thanks to new TV shows like Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, the new Superman animated series, and also later Smallville, he was also experiencing a revival and a renewed popularity with people. But in the movies, he was dead in the movies, and it was not Doomsday or Lex Luthor or one of the usual suspects that killed him in the movies. Ironically, it was the Salkinds who had killed Superman in the movies. The very people who had given birth to the modern Superman movie franchise. They were responsible for killing him by overseeing the lackluster Superman 3 and then by farming out Superman 4 to the incompetent auspices of the Golden Globus studio. So Superman after Superman 4 was dead as far as the cinema. But there were brighter days ahead, at least for me, because after a prolonged period of development hell throughout the 90s, where there were multiple Superman projects started and then abandoned, Superman Returns was finally made and released, and to my way of thinking, it was the best of all the Superman movies. Superman Returns was directed by Bryan Singer, who had first come to prominence directing The Usual Suspects, and then had earned a lot of nerd cred by directing the first two X-Men films, which were then and still are very highly regarded by comic book fans. And he had abandoned his X-Men franchise, left it in the incompetent hands of Brett Ratner, in order to do Superman Returns. He was given the keys to the most iconic comic book superhero of all time, and he was allowed to come in and revive the Superman franchise, and to do it in a way that no one had tried to do yet, and that way was to deliberately go back and connect with that Donner Superman film that had started the entire modern Superman cinematic franchise. He was going to make a Superman film with a whole new cast in his own style, but that would deliberately seek to connect itself to the Richard Donner Superman films. He would use the John Williams themes from the Donner film. He would reference certain bits of character history and plot from the Donner Superman films. There would be a kind of shared continuity between the two films. Superman Returns would not quite be a sequel to Superman or Superman 2, but it would seek to occupy some of the same space as those films. And that confused some people. Some people saw the movie and couldn't decide. They got caught up, as comic book fans often do. They became preoccupied and distracted with issues of canon, with issues of, well, you know, is this a sequel to Superman the movie, or is this a sequel to Superman 2? Did these characters live through Superman 2? Do they remember those events? Or are they remembering the Donner cut version? Or there all these questions of continuity were argued about by comic book fans that ultimately are not important. What is important is that Superman Returns establishes itself as an emotional successor to the Richard Donner Superman. It is a revisitation of that version of the character, with new people, with a new director, with a new look, with a new style, but it is that version of the character. It is that Superman, the Superman that we all came to love when he was played by Christopher Reeve. And the most important thing that Bryan Singer's Superman Returns incorporates from that Donner version is that earnestness, that sincerity. I am in the minority. I've made 2 videos on my channel years ago. They're actually 2 of my most viewed videos now, which is kind of cool, in defense of Superman Returns, because I am one of the few people who thinks that Superman Returns is absolutely a masterpiece. I think it is a splendid movie. It is my favorite superhero movie. I like it better than The Dark Knight. I like it better than any of the Spider-Man movies, any of the X-Men movies. I have probably seen it more times than any of those. And I cannot tell you what affection I have for Superman Returns. I just absolutely love it. And I don't feel ashamed of that. I don't feel embarrassed by that. I don't apologize for that. I know that a lot of people really don't like it. I do. I love it. I absolutely adore it. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why. And I'll try not to repeat myself too much from the What's So Bad About Superman Returns videos, if you've seen those. I'll try to make this a little bit more general, but this is a review of Superman Returns, and it's going to be a goddamn glowing review because I love this movie. But how can I love this movie and give a negative review to Superman 4 when it seems like Superman Returns and Superman 4 are both doing similar things? They're both trying to relive the old days. They're pining for the glory days. I mentioned in my Superman 4 review all of the different scenes in Superman 4 that are verbatim lifts from Superman the movie or Superman 2. And there is a lot of that in Superman Returns as well. How can I count one against the movie and count one in favor of the movie? Well, it's a very simple distinction. When Bryan Singer makes a scene in Superman Returns reminiscent of a scene in Richard Donner's Superman or Superman 2, he is doing that with an intentional purpose to tell us something about the character of Superman, to show us something about the character. Superman 4, it felt like these things were just being done for the sake of it, just to as almost like a kind of misguided form of fan service. Just, well, we know they liked seeing Superman fly with Lois before, so let's just do it again. But in Superman Returns, the characters seem aware that that is what's happening. Remember the situation of Superman Returns. Superman has been absent from Earth for years, just as he was absent from our lives as filmgoers for many years. He was absent, and now he is returned. And in that return, he has found that the world has moved on without him, and that people are getting along just fine without Superman, including Lois, who is engaged to be married to another man, who has a child, apparently, with this other man. And this is very hard for Superman to handle. And so he returns and he finds Lois on the roof of the Daily Planet, and he is trying to recapture the past with Lois. It's a lot like Gatsby. It's a lot like Jay Gatsby's yearning to recapture his previous relationship with Daisy. Gatsby wants to return to the past, and he finds that he can't, that it's impossible. And Superman wants to do that as well with Lois, and there's that same sort of yearning. And I feel the same thing when I read The Great Gatsby, and I feel that impossible yearning of Gatsby to return to the past and to have what he had with Daisy once again. I get that same feeling when I watch those scenes with Superman and Lois in Superman Returns. Superman returns and he wants to have what he had. And he tries at first to do it by doing the things that they used to do. He takes her on a flight together across Metropolis at night, just like they did in Superman the movie, hoping that somehow that will rekindle something. And he finds that it's more complicated than that. And to her credit, Lois is the one who sort of puts her foot down. They have this wonderful, nostalgic, romantic flight together, and then they go back to the Daily Planet, and it's Lois, not Superman, but Lois, who says, "We can't do this. Richard is a good man, and I can't do this to him." And there's nothing he can do about it. He's helpless. He's in this incredibly vulnerable state. And that works for me. That gets to me. It moves me. The story of Superman in Superman Returns moves me. and that's why I feel so strongly about it. That's why I think so highly of this movie. It's a Superman movie that takes Superman seriously and that sees him in a way that is emotional and that is character driven and that really just breaks my heart. And to me, that's just as good as it gets. That's what makes Superman Returns great to me, is that it's a heartbreaking Superman movie. His relationship with Lois, his relationship with Jason, the place that he finds himself in this film, it's just it couldn't be any better. And I'm bewildered that so many people seem to have such hatred for this movie. Especially when so many of their criticisms are so stupid. People who say that, well, he doesn't hit anybody in this movie. Superman doesn't hit anybody in this movie. He didn't hit anybody in Superman the movie either. Superman, it doesn't have to be an action hero. He does incredible feats of superness in Superman Returns. The airplane rescue is phenomenal. Not only is it cool, like in a fanboy way, to see Superman save the plane, and it's a really great callback to the Fleischer Superman, where he saves the plane, the super aircraft carrier plane, from crashing by landing it in the middle of the city. That wonderful Superman animated short. It's a callback to that. It's got the physics of Superman stopping it at the nose and the ripples of force going up through the airplane. He saves it at a baseball game, so you've got like the Americana aspect of it. I mean, and you get the wonderful staging of it at the baseball stadium where he lands the plane in the outfield, and then there's that sort of quiet pause, and then the people in this stadium realizing that they've just witnessed the return of Superman and erupting into applause. It just doesn't get any better than that. And before that, there's that splendid character moment with Lois, where she's in the crashing plane, she thinks she's going to die, and then she sees just that glimpse of Superman flying past the window, something that she thought she would never see again. And Kate Bosworth, who gets really shit on for her performance in this movie, but has a wonderful look on her face when she is reacting to this sight of Superman flying past the window to save her, that she never expected to see. That is just wonderful. It is just... I don't see how I, as a Superman fan, have any right to expect anything more than this. This is an absolutely wonderful movie. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it and how much I admire it, how much I really just adore this movie. As many times as I've watched it, as many times as I've seen it, it has never disappointed me. My esteem for it has only increased through the years, through the repeated viewings. It is Superman at his absolute best as a character. We see everything about this character that has made this character mythical, that has made this character a part of American culture and indeed of world culture, that has made this character one of the great creations of American fiction. We have seen how he has the strength that harkens back to the great figures of Greco-Roman mythology, the strength of Hercules. We've seen him with the courage and the yearning of Odysseus, and in Superman Returns, this yearning to return to the past, to recapture his youth that we see in The Great Gatsby. There are all these allusions, these references, these traits that we find in classical literary characters that we find in Superman Returns. It is a splendid, splendid take on the character and a wonderful film, an unjustly panned film, an underappreciated masterpiece. And if Man of Steel is half the movie that Superman Returns is, I will feel very fortunate indeed. I'm looking forward to Man of Steel. The trailers have made it look amazing. Henry Cavill looks great. It's very well cast. I love Michael Shannon and everything he does. I'm looking forward to seeing him take up the mantle of General Zod from Terrence Stamp. I have high hopes for the movie. If it is as good as Superman Returns, I will be very happy. If it is better than Superman Returns, I will feel very privileged indeed as a film goer and as a Superman fan, because despite what most people have said, Superman Returns to me is as good as a Superman film as has yet been made. Still, to this day, I will say that. Maybe tomorrow after I've seen Man of Steel and you watch my review for that, you will hear me say something different. But for now, having not seen Man of Steel, I will tell you, Superman Returns is as good as it gets.